the I Have a Dream Foundation, Los Angeles. And so it's an education nonprofit, and we support underserved students in Los Angeles County, and we support students from first grade all the way through college. So it's a long-term commitment, and it's a really amazing mission. And how I came to get into this role was I actually have always been interested in the education sector. And so I first learned about this nonprofit actually through the Human Development 470 internship class. And I started off as an intern there and have been with them for a couple of years now.
Thank you so much. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Next, Dr. Lori Ochoa.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Lori Ochoa. I am a board certified behavior analyst. So I received my PhD degree in psychology with a specialization in behavior analysis. So I've been in the field for about 20 years working with children and individuals with autism and developmental disabilities, but really at the core, I'm a specialist in human behavior and understanding human behavior to maximize the potential for our clients. So my job is, I actually wear a lot of different hats. My main job, my main role is I'm one of the co-founders and executive directors at Bloom Behavioral Health. We are an agency that works very closely with Cal State Long Beach and the different departments, because we are constantly hiring and recruiting students who are pursuing a degree in human development, human services, special ed, child development, psychology, or related fields to come on board with our company under our supervision and mentorship to become behavioral therapists. And that's how I basically got started in this field, was as a behavioral therapist, working one-on-one with clients, maximizing their potential, utilizing the science, and just being able to do this meaningful work, working with families. And so my role really is as the executive director to oversee clinical services, to do a lot of community outreach and engagement, to provide mentorship and supervision. I'm also an assistant professor at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology for graduate students in the behavior analysis department. So I do a lot of mentorship for individuals that are pursuing a higher graduate degree and pursuing behavior analysis. I wear another hat. I am also a well-being speaker and coach, utilizing the science of behavior to maximize potential for individuals just wanting to optimize their well-being as well. And lastly, I'm a parent with a child with special needs. So my son was born deaf. He also has special needs. And so I wear that hat as a parent and also the clinical hat providing the services. So yeah, I wear a lot of hats.
Thank you so much. So I hope you can be my mentor. So inspirational. Thank you very much for being here. And last but not least, Brian Sanchez. I know you just hopped in, but we're just introducing ourselves. Just tell us a bit about who you are, where you work, and how you came to be in the position that you're currently in.
Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Brian Sanchez. I apologize for the lateness, but like I said, my name is Brian. I am currently a participant choice specialist at Harbor Regional Center, which is a fancy term for a programs specialist. We deal with a new program called the Self-Determination Program. And if you're not familiar with the Regional Center, in California, regional centers are there are 21 different regional centers across the state. They're overseen by the Department of Developmental Services. And what we do is that we help link services and supports to families and individuals who have developmental disabilities, such as autism, cerebral palsy, intellectual disability, as well as epilepsy. There's a fifth category, kind of like a all-encompassing category for similar disabilities. Prior to this role, I've been in the regional center for about 3 years now. I've been a program specialist for a little over 8 months. So it's a new role. Prior to that, I did service coordination. Similar to case management, I had a caseload about 90 individuals and families, all children's age or school age. And how I landed in this role was that I did ABA services for 3 years. So Dr. Ochoa, similar there. I did that for 3 years, providing direct services to individuals, mostly children with autism. I did obtain my undergraduate in human development, actually at Cal State Long Beach. So I'm an alumni. And yeah, that kind of opened the door for where I am now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you to the three of you again for being here and for being open to our questions. So, again, we're here to just give the students in our department an idea of the kind of career paths and career trajectories that they could have after graduating. So for the next, say, half an hour to 40 minutes or so, I have a list of prepared questions that Dr. Kelly sent to you in advance. And I'll just go through some of those questions so that the students can get a sense of what some of the responses are. And then after that, I'll open it up to questions directly from the students. So for the students who are currently here, if you have questions that come up during this Q&A at the beginning, feel free to type them into the chat box so that you don't forget and so that I don't forget. We likely won't be able to get to all of the questions at the very end, but then that way we at least know what the questions are, and then maybe we can follow up by email with our speakers. All right, sound good? Okay, so I'm going to ask some questions, and when I ask them, any one of you can jump in, and if you don't feel like you each have to answer every single question that I ask. All right, so just like if something is speaking to you, please feel free to answer. If not, we can skip. All right, so the first I want to ask you all about some of your education and preparation. So Brian, you just told us that you're an alum of this program, which is really exciting. But for what credentials and educational degrees or licenses are required entry for the kind of work that you do? So anybody, please free. Go ahead.
Sure. And I love this question because I do a lot of speaking engagements at different community colleges and just colleges in general. And I think a lot of students have reservations to apply for a position being a behavioral therapist or working with children with autism or developmental disabilities because they may think that they're not qualified. And so I'm always doing a lot of community outreach and engagement to let students know that you are qualified, that the requirement to be a behavioral therapist to join our team is to just be pursuing a degree, a bachelor's degree or AA degree in the related field of psychology or child development or social work or human development or human services. And similar to Brian, like myself, I started out in this field as an undergrad student. I actually went to UC Irvine. I was a psychology major. I knew I had a passion for working with children and also for the science of psychology and human behavior. And that's basically how I got my feet wet. It's finding a mentor, finding a location where there is the supervision, there is that mentorship model. You're not going to be kind of thrown out there on your own. We do offer training and certification that you can acquire and obtain once you come on board with the company. So I'm always encouraging individuals, don't think that you're not eligible to apply or get started now. If anything, I think it's a great way or a great opportunity to get your feet wet, to get that experience, to identify what is it that I'm passionate about? Is this a population I want to work with? And that's kind of was my journey, is being able to work at a company and find mentors and then just discover what I really enjoyed about the position. And that helped to solidify my future career, pursuing a master's and a doctoral degree. Now, that's not necessary to have a master's or a doctoral degree, but it was in somebody giving me that opportunity and taking that chance on me, that where I was able to get that experience under my belt.
Wow, thank you so much. I think that's that's a great plug for sort of like hands-on learning, right? And it's don't ever feel like you don't have enough particular expertise or knowledge in a certain field to learn more about it and to get more experience. All right, thank you.
Yes.
And I think on a related note, Brian, did you want to jump in? I don't know if I saw you.
I can.
Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah.
So similar to that, like I said, I obtained my undergraduate bachelor's at Cal State Long Beach. I am currently in my 3-year program for my master's degree in MSW at Long Beach as well. In fact, right now I'm actually in my practicum. I'm working at a Creighton, it's called Creighton's Mental Health Services Agency. So I'm learning a lot regarding mental health, but for my particular position, my actual, I guess, career or my job is I just needed a bachelor's degree and some experience, 2-year experience working with individuals with developmental disabilities, either personal experience or out in the field. Because I think personal experience, with I have some coworkers who have siblings or relatives who are either on the spectrum or have other type of special needs. That's also qualifies. That's real life experience. So I definitely agree with Dr. Ochoa. It's not necessarily what you know, it's your capacity of learning. And as long as you're willing to do so, obviously, I think everyone in this room right now has that capacity. I mean, you've made it to undergraduate school. Long Beach is actually a pretty competitive school. So be very proud, go Beach. Yeah, definitely your willingness will get you far, as well as your dedication. So
Thank you so much for that. I think I have a follow-up question. I will direct this directly to Sherlyn, because I think you graduated the most recently out of our 3 speakers. So, coming from, everybody, all the students in the room are probably thinking like, what can I do while I'm here at Cal State Long Beach to make sure that I'm the most prepared for my eventual career path? So, what would you say, looking back, like what college or educational activity taught you the skills that you think are the most valuable to you now? And then, if you could have done something differently when you were here at Cal State Long Beach, what would it have been?
Sure. So, yes, I am an alum. I graduated fall 2019, so literally right before the pandemic, and I have so much respect and kudos to all of you students who were going through that college experience. More power to you. So, in terms of the academic and like real world or experiences that have really helped me, honestly, human development is a really amazing major just because it's very interdisciplinary. So you get a lot of, understanding people, but also understanding societies and things like that. And I think that really puts into context a lot of, for example, the populations that I serve are, many of them are first generation students, low income. Some are also DACA recipients. So it just really helps to provide a better understanding of the world and the type of people we work with. And one thing, though, that I was actually talking to Dr. Kelly about previously that kind of came as a surprise to me after graduating and working a lot is when we're assigned a group project in school, there's kind of a feeling of like, oh, a little bit of a groan or, like having to work with others, but it's actually very, very important in the line of work that I do, or just a lot of jobs really, because we're constantly like meeting with, sometimes we'll have different corporate partnerships that want to reach out and kind of volunteer with our kids, or even mentors and volunteers, working with them, coordinating like different schedules, even that whole like, okay, when's our first meeting during a group project? That happens very, very often, trying to set up appointments, doing a calendar, sending a calendar invite, when are you free? So those things, and just really learning to understand and work with people who have different communication styles. That's super important, and trying to learn to not take things so personally. Like sometimes people really do prefer to have a shorter sentences, and it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I don't want to talk to you. It's just their communication style. So that's honestly something I had to learn and come to terms with as well. if I could have done anything differently in college, I would say to really just explore more interests, and like volunteering is a really great way where it's not as big of a commitment. And I know sometimes roles are unpaid, like internship roles are unpaid. And so it's not always feasible. Like you have many students at Cal State Long Beach that are really hard workers and they're working jobs as well. But if you could volunteer in some other interests that you have, it's a great way to get some experience.
Wow, thank you so much. That was really, I think that was really illuminating. And I feel the same about the group projects. But yeah, that's something that I have learned in my professional life as well. Like it never, coordinating calendars never ends. And in some ways it's gotten easier, right? With technology, like when, back in my day, back in my day when I was in college, you couldn't send a calendar anyway. So you had to sit there and like manually figure out when everybody was free. So in some ways things have gotten easier. I think on that same note, I would love to hear, and any of the panelists can jump in about just kind of when I think you're so right, Sherlyn, that so many people at Cal State Long Beach are incredibly busy, right? Working multiple jobs, trying to stay on top of schoolwork at the same time. Just looking ahead and thinking about like, what would a schedule look like in the workforce? So could any of you tell us like what kind of work schedule does your career demand? How much flexibility do you have? Do you have a fixed 40-hour work week? Do you have variable schedules? Do you ever have to work weekends or evenings? Could you tell us more about that?
Well, I can I can speak to that in regards to our company at Bloom Behavioral Health and what it means to be a behavioral therapist. So as behavioral therapists, we go into the family's homes to provide the therapy. And what's really nice about what we offer is that it's part-time, because a lot of the students we understand go to school, and our clients go to school during the day too. So our clients generally are not available to receive therapy until the afternoon or when they get home from school. So it is a nice opportunity for students to get a paid position or paid employment, and also simultaneously they're getting experience, and they're getting mentorship, and they're getting supervision, and they're obtaining their practicum, internship hours and objectives as well. So that's where I think what we offer as a behavioral therapist, and why that field is very attractive to students, is because oftentimes students are maybe working at like a Starbucks, or and they're juggling work and school, and they're like, I really need obviously a paid position, but I also need to start gaining experience related to my degree, or starting to gain experience so I can identify what I want to do post my bachelor's degree. So as a behavioral therapist, we work with your availability to see where we can match you to work with the client based on your availability and based on the client's availability. And that can range anywhere from 10 to about 25 hours a week, just depending on the child's authorization for treatment. Now, in terms of my role as a behavior analyst, as the executive director, I'm constantly this morning I was doing like a coaching session, and then tomorrow I'll do a training in the office. Right now I'm doing a community engagement. So I this afternoon I'm going to probably see clients in the afternoon. So my schedule as a behavior analyst, as a director, is very fluid and flexible, because I'm wearing so many different hats with so many different roles. So I kind of just wanted to kind of paint that picture if you were interested in starting off as a behavioral therapist and what that might look like for you, but also kind of paint a picture for my role as the director, and kind of it being more fluid with all the different roles and hats that I wear.
Thanks. That's really, both of those descriptions are really helpful, right? So like what it looks like at an entry level position in the company, and eventually what it might look like, 10, 15, 20 years down the road in the same career trajectory. Thank you. Do either of the other panelists want to chime in on this? Like, so what does it look like in your work? What's the workflow like?
I can chime in.
Yeah.
So I think my current role, I'm pretty fortunate because I have transitioned to working 100% remote, which really means I'm 50% of the time in the office now. So they got me. They told me it was 100% remote, but they still have me coming in for meetings or whatever it may be. But here at the regional center, our days are pretty fixed. So we have 8:30 to 5. And as a service coordinator or case manager, what we would have to do is we look over our emails in the beginning of the day, make sure that any information that we have to provide to either our clients or our providers that are delivering services to our clients, we're meeting their needs and open communication. But prior to COVID, we were also driving to our families' homes. So we would meet them. We would not necessarily conduct an assessment, but just see how they're doing, how their year is going, what their needs look like. And seeing them face to face is definitely of an importance and a priority for us. We want to see our clients. We want to see how they're doing. We want to make sure that they're doing well, that the information that is verbally being provided to us can also be substantiated when we see our clients face to face. So it definitely involves a lot of driving, in Southern California, especially. I think we can't escape that. That's just a reality in our world. But as my current position, like I said, I'm a program specialist, so I'm working more directly, not with our clients anymore, but with our staff, with the people that provide services to our families and our individuals. So it's a lot of coordination and a lot of communication. And I find that communication piece is the most difficult for one reason or another. And as like the group meetings or the group projects, as Sherlyn had mentioned, are definitely learning experience, right? Use that opportunity to, it can be challenging, but it's also a learning opportunity. It's something you will continue doing for the rest of your life, and it's a useful tool and skill to have. So that's usually my day-to-day. During my practicum, it's a little different as well. We do deliver direct services to our clients. So again, we're driving out to our families' homes. Here, like I said, we do mental health services. So we're also providing that, coordinating with our families, not only with our clients, but also with their caregivers, whoever might be involved in the family's life. The 9-to-5s, jobs sound nice, but I think when we look past that, the flexibility that other professions may offer to develop your own schedule and your own time is also beneficial, especially when you have other plans like going to school or pursuing your master's or your doctor's, whatever it may be, or even just your hobbies, right? Because that's also very important to have. But yeah, that's how a day-to-day looks like with us.
Thank you so much. And I think that was I want to thank you for that honest assessment of what it's like, right? Like there's trade-offs in every job. And I think for all of us, it's just up to us to figure out what our priorities are. And so you at least know, if you have to make sacrifices, you at least know what you're sacrificing for. And I think I'm somebody who's a new parent, so I have a toddler. So so things like, for me, like having a flexible schedule is worth a lot. So, if that's something that you're thinking about, if having a family of your own is important to you, that's something to consider as well, right? There's a lot of stability in a 9-to-5, but being able to take off and pick up your kid from daycare is worth a lot, like literally, right? Like monetarily, that's worth a lot. So it's something to consider. Sherlyn, did you want to chime in as well? Like what's the workflow like in your job?
Sure. So I am more of on the administrative side, coordinating. So it is more of a typical like 9-to-5. Actually, like sometimes when I first started, it's part-time. So it was actually 11 to 5. And we have been remote this whole time, mostly for my role. And again, I want to clarify that I don't work directly with our students, so I am a little bit different in that sense. And so it is more of like a lot of meetings, emails, again, the calendaring, setting up different partnerships, meetings and stuff like that. But there really is a lot of communication, even if it's more internally. Like I coordinate the mentor program, and so that has to one, a lot of outside volunteers and mentors who are interested and kind of like talking to them, getting a feel for what they're like, if they'd be a good fit. But there's also a lot of internal communication where I'm relaying information to the program coordinators who do oversee the students directly, and getting approval on certain things from my supervisors as well. So I would say that's what a typical day is like.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I think I'll move on to a set of questions that I think is the students are probably really wondering, which is about like the job market. So all three of you, to the best of your knowledge, what would you say the job market is currently like in your field? So if somebody is interested, like, you know, after this panel, like I really want to work in this field, what is it like? What are they going to come up against?
Well, I can chime in on this. I'll try to be brief. So I'm very familiar with the regional center system. I've been in the field working with individuals with developmental disabilities for 20 years. And prior to 2015, the health plans were not mandated or required to provide behavioral health treatment to individuals, not only with autism, but with other developmental disabilities. Like my son's deaf and he has other developmental delays. He also receives behavioral health therapy. So before 2000, I would say, yeah, I mean, Brian, I'm not sure, you know, you probably weren't there at that time, but the regional center system was the sole provider. The counties were responsible for providing these services. So as behavior analysts and behavioral companies, we were contracted with the county program. So I worked very closely with the regional center system. Then we transitioned everything in 2015 and 2017. All those services got rolled over to the health plans because, like I said, the legislation and the laws passed requiring and mandating for health plans. So all the Medi-Cal health plans, the commercial health plans like Aetna, HealthNet, MHN, Blue Shield, Blue Cross, Kaiser, they all required to fund these services and contract with behavioral companies. So what that did is it opened a huge floodgate in 2015 for a need for behavioral therapists, behavior analysts to specialize in providing these services, because many of the families were ineligible based on the regional center criteria. And then when it moved over into the health plans, now all of a sudden the criteria changed, making behavioral therapy more accessible to families. So what does that mean for the job market? It meant that in 2015, and even to this day, we're not caught up yet. We don't have enough behavior analysts, behavioral therapists, behavioral technicians to provide the level of services and therapy needed for all the children that are eligible to receive these services through their health insurance. And so, for example, a marriage and family therapist, there might be, like, let's say, for example, like 12,000, you know, there's only like 1,000 behavior analysts, for example. Like, so just the ratio of MFTs to behavior analysts, like, we're just not caught up yet with the level of MFTs or psychologists or mental health professionals. So it's a growing, booming field. And if you're wanting to secure a job, you're going to be very successful in securing a job if you go down this path. So that's just, yeah, long story short.
Yeah, and that's like music to our ears, right? Like it's it sounds like it's really a booming field. And I think if anybody, like a lot of us, I think have been seeking mental health care over the last couple of years because, like looks around the world. Yeah, the wait lists are just everywhere, right? There are just not enough mental health professionals to go around for everybody who's seeking services.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So how about Brian and Sherlyn as well?
I agree that the social service world, I think, will never have enough people to fulfill the needs that we need. So the job market's always open. Something that I've learned, working in this field for almost half a decade is that the social services world, right, operates from a lens of helping and assisting and meeting the needs of individuals, which sometimes can be in conflict with the rest of the economic industry, which is very capitalistic. Fortunately, the state of California has come to recognize that. And so we always joke around, right? Like, oh, well, we're in the social services not to make money, but to help people. But we need to make money, right? That's it's not only necessary for us living and surviving, but also for our well-being in general and to continue to survive. So I say fortunately that the state is recognizing that, and so they are increasing the wages in order to draw in more people into the field, and that's across all social services field. So all of you students, it's a good time. It's a good time to jump into the field, to learn that experiences, to get paid, and to continue networking and exploring where you want to take your career and the rest of your life. So I definitely think that now is the opportunity to do so. Starting positions, and I think at any job, we're not going to get our dream job right away, and that's okay. Because I know for me personally, I didn't know what my dream job looked like. In fact, I still don't know what that looks like. All I know is that I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Is it difficult? Yes. Do I have easy days? Absolutely. Do I have very difficult days? Absolutely. But that's part of the job, and I think that's part of life in general. So I'm sorry, I forgot the question that I was trying to address.
Yeah, is the job market good? What's the job market like? And I think you definitely answered that. Yeah.
Yeah, job market looks good. Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Sherlyn? Do you want to weigh in on this?
Sure, yes. So I work for an education nonprofit, and I think those will always be around. And I started off actually as an administrative assistant. That was my first job, like right after my internship with human development. And so those roles are definitely more entry level, and they will always be around because people really do need help coordinating and learning about lots of different things. But there are a lot of transferable skills from that. So I definitely, even if, our organization, I would definitely say, is in the helping profession, helping sector, but my role wasn't originally, working directly with our families and our students. And so maybe if you kind of have interest in that, but maybe kind of widen your search and to just be a part of that organization, you could definitely maybe have more of like an administrative assistant role. Those will always be around. But I did want to mention that one of my coworkers actually was also a human development alum, and she's a program coordinator. So she does work directly with the students, and she again got that job right after her internship here at Cal State Long Beach. So it kind of depends on space, but definitely lean into your networks because you never know what it could turn to.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think especially, I think all three of you are able to do at least some aspects of your work remotely, right? So I think this is also a really interesting time to perhaps go beyond. I think before the pandemic, you had to look within a certain mile radius of like how far you were willing to commute. And if you didn't have a car, but I think now you can actually open that up. So for all of us, we can keep that in mind, right? You're not stuck in a particular geographical location anymore in the way that you were before the pandemic. Right. So I have one more question before I open it up to students, and that's, so if a student is, after this panel, is like, I really want to learn more about this profession, I would really like to pursue it. Where would you suggest students go to find out more about your line of work? So are there magazines or journals that you suggest they read? Are there books that you might suggest? Are there professional groups? Are there LinkedIn groups? Like, what do you suggest people do to learn more before they dive in?
I know personally, what I did was I started with a basic Google search of, well, that's not true. That's not where I started. I started just looking up at Indeed, right? All those jobs for hire. And after I found a specific job that I was interested in, I did a Google search on them, and looking at their website. And that's the basic. But believe it or not, in interviews, they will ask you, what did you do to prepare for this job? And that's where you want to learn. You want to start looking at their websites, seeing what type of services they provide, any testimonials that you might find there as well. I think one of the best things also for me in contacting or looking for any type of career options is also speaking and networking with individuals that are already in the field. And for example, you attending this panel is a great way to start doing that. I personally like to share my email information there. So if you have any follow-up questions, you can always reach me, and I can help out. And if I can, I'll definitely know or find someone who can. But networking is a great tool. You have the internet now, right? And that's also going to be super major in identifying and weeding out maybe things that you like, maybe things that you don't like, or maybe things that you're willing to try. So that would be my suggestion.
There's some really great suggestions. Yeah, and I think I've been asked that as well. What did you do to prepare? Or like, do you have questions about us for the company? And you better have some questions when you go in for an interview. Anyone else want to chime in on this panel? Okay, great.
Sure. Yeah, I just also in the chat, I just said if you're interested to learn more about applying for a behavior therapist position, or you just want to learn more about what the field, I actually looked up the statistics because I was actually curious. So in the US, there's 48,000 behavior analysts. There's compared to 125,579 MFTs. So again, it just goes to show how even 125,000 MFTs is still, like I said, not enough. But think about all the kids receiving diagnosis and needing behavioral therapy. There's only 48,000 behavior analysts. So we're still a very small field, and we're quickly growing. And if you want to learn more, like I said, you can reach out to me. I think the best way is to just, you can go online and go to the BACB website. So it stands for the Behavior Analyst Certification Board, BACB.com. But you can also visit our website, bloombh.com, BLOOMBH.com. I'll put it in the notes or the chat. But again, it's just like Brian said, it's reaching out to people who firsthand have had that experience. Like, this is a great start, taking advantage of these opportunities of the career panel, getting connected, talking to your colleagues, and just getting experience, I think, is just going to be extremely invaluable. So that way you can decide what you want to do to further pursue in your higher graduate degree or even your career.
Sherilyn, do you want to chime in on this as well?
Yes. So in terms of, so the way that we operate is in the elementary school ages, we have a partnership with the school district. And so we do a lot of after school programming. And so if that is of interest to you, then I would start kind of locally with some, maybe your local school district. Also, there are other nonprofits that they kind of help other nonprofits and other after school programs that are in the school district. So one of them is called the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools. And that is just like a network of different after school programs and things like that. So that's a good way to kind of see what other organizations are out there, because there are a lot of us that have this really amazing mission of, you know, helping students, especially first gen low income students. So I would definitely start like with there, but then there's also AmeriCorps, which is like the Peace Corps, but it's domestic, and they it's like a 1 year of service. But from there, the listings, there are so many of, again, organizations that have different types of missions. So that is just something to, even if you might not do AmeriCorps yourself, like for the whole year, it's a good kind of way to see what organizations and nonprofits and things like that are out there.
That's fantastic advice. I would have never thought to do that, but that's absolutely right. Like that's where everybody posts, right? That's really, thank you so much. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to open it up to student questions. So the floor is yours. So don't feel, don't feel like you have to wait. You can just turn off your mute and go ahead. Oh, that's great, Louise. Amazing. Adi, did you have a question? Saw that you unmuted yourself. Huh? Going once, going twice. I have more questions I can ask.
I know, I was gonna say, don't be shy. I have
Don't be
20 years
shy.
of experience. I'm a mentor, I'm a professor, been working in the field. I'm ask away. This is your guys' time and opportunity to take advantage of this great experience and opportunity right now.
Anything that comes to mind?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So
Jennifer,
it's
please.
more like towards like the pandemic. How do you guys feel like it's affected your job career, specifically for Sherlyn? Because I do know that you do work remotely, right? As you said. So do you feel like you're not getting that like experience as like you could have probably got before COVID, or if you can like elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's a really great question, especially because, yes, I have been remote from the beginning, and that was kind of a different jump, especially coming from school. There were some like habits that I had, like sometimes I would study on my bed, I'll admit it, sometimes I would procrastinate, but when you're at home and working remotely, you might not necessarily be able to have those same habits. Like I realized that I couldn't really work from my bed. I needed to set a dedicated, office space and things like that, and just really put certain boundaries in that way, and kind of just because you don't really have to, wake up and commute, go to work, get ready, all of those things. So it kind of was a bit of an adjustment to really put myself in like, okay, now I'm going to work, and a different mindset approach. But in terms of not really getting the same experience, I definitely think there's a point there, because actually my role was newer. Like when I first started off from the internship, and then I was brought on, that was actually a new role. And so even my supervisor has said that sometimes it was a lot harder to really, like sit down with me and kind of go over things. Like we would have to do like share screen on Zoom, which isn't always the same feelings and stuff like that. But I think especially over time, and a lot of people have gotten used to remote work and adjustments, we've definitely been able to make it work. So I think it really does depend on your own preferences, and also learning to really kind of advocate for yourself or ask questions. I was very non-confrontational, just kind of like, oh yes, okay, like people pleaser almost. And so I wouldn't really ask as much follow-up questions. And then I would feel like, oh no, like my boss isn't, right next to me. I can't just go next door and ask her a question. And so there were even times where I almost felt like I was intruding if I asked her a question. And so she made it very clear to me, that asking questions is a really good sign. It's definitely okay to ask for help, especially if it's your first job, first role out of college. It really shows that you're eager to learn, and there definitely might be mistakes, but just really learning from them and growing. I think that was a really big part of working remote.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Did either of the other panelists want to chime in on this? How has the pandemic affected the day-to-day of your job, and also maybe perhaps the trajectory of your career?
So prior to the pandemic, telehealth was an option, but it wasn't really particularly being utilized. It was more utilized, for example, if we had to serve a remote client, like we couldn't get to, Antelope Valley, for example. So we would do telehealth, and mostly everything was in-person meetings, in-person trainings, in-person interviews, in-person, parent training, everything was in person. And then what happened was during the pandemic, there was a huge shift in our field and just in healthcare in general to start utilizing telehealth. So we have gotten back into the in-person, but we now also utilize more so the telehealth component that we did before. So I do a lot of telehealth with like trainings, for example. I'll do a lot of telehealth for like parent check-ins. I'll do telehealth to check in and support my staff who are working with clients, because all of our therapists have company iPads with cameras. So it's all HIPAA, it's all confidential. So I can, like, if they need me on the minute, rather than it being a phone call, I can just like, okay, let me log in and I can just watch your session right now and give you immediate feedback. So that really has changed the trajectory, because I don't see telehealth going away. If anything, I see it being more utilized to further enhance the services that we're able to provide and just provide more immediate assistance. But I do still, like the other day, I did a school observation for one of my clients. I went into the school to go consult with the school psychologist and collaborate. If it's needed, I'll go into the home to overlap with my staff and with the client. But a lot of times just doing the telehealth is sufficient, and it makes it more convenient and efficient and effective to do our job, to just provide that clinical support. So that, in terms of the pandemic, with that respect, with telehealth, it's really definitely changed the trajectory of healthcare. And I think that that's going to be here to stay.
Thank you so much. And it sounds like what both of you are saying, but in different ways, right? So I think Dr. Lori Ochoa is talking about it from a mentor perspective. And I think, Charlene, you're talking about it from a mentee perspective, is that it sounds like working remotely means that you really do have to be a little bit more proactive to seek mentorship, right? Because you don't have your mentor constantly watching over you because you're not in the same physical space. So, it sounds like if you want somebody to check up on you, you kind of have to ask for a little bit more support. So that seems like that's something that's shifted. That's something that's shifted, I think, in it's not just these jobs, right? I think it's every job in the universe has made that shift in the last couple of years. Brian, do you want to chime in on this? So I know that, so they got you and you're back in the office 50%, so you were given this remote option. Would you have had that option before? And what are your coworkers doing? Do you feel, I'm personally interested, do you feel like social pressure to come into the office? What is that like? Why are you back in the office 50%, even though you were told that it's remote? I think a lot of students are probably curious about this as well.
So as a service coordinator, I was 6 months in when the pandemic hit. And so I had just finished my 6-month probation. And as soon as COVID hit, we transitioned to working remote. And I feel a lot of the same sentiments that the rest of the panelists shared. I felt like I didn't have the continuing or immediate support from my QB mate. I couldn't go over, ask questions. You know, I felt like the work was a lot more overwhelming. And it, of course, is not just because I was working remotely, but because just of the circumstances all over the world that were going on at the same time. But in my new position, that one was, it was a new position actually that the state just made. And that one was designated 100% remote from the beginning. But I think that with the pandemic, it not only facilitated the way that we communicate, but it also challenged us as well at the same time. Kind of counterintuitive, but at least that's how I feel. We can always zoom in on a call really quick or FaceTime with some of our coworkers. In fact, when I am working from home, I have a dual screen monitor, and I feel like I'm always on Zoom calls, back to back to back, even during my lunch. So because it has facilitated that communication in a sense, I feel like it's abused a little bit. And so I'm always working. I'm always on a Zoom call, even during my lunch. But at the same time, it has made it a little bit more challenging. For example, I do conduct trainings and mentorship. And so whenever we do it via Zoom, having that or that social interaction is lacking. I can't read the room the same way I would be in person. Some of them have their cameras off. I can't read that facial expression. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Are you there? You know, are you doing something else? So it's definitely brought upon some challenges. In our agency at the regional center, we have transitioned to what we call an AB schedule. So we'll have half of the individuals at work, the rest working remote, and they'll switch off every week or so. And so the reason that they have me going back into the office at least 50% of the time is so we can have those meetings face to face, because there is a lot of value in having that personal interaction with one another. So I do think I agree with Dr. Ochoa. You know, it's here to stay. The telehealth, I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't think it should go anywhere. It facilitates our ability to provide services, but at the same time, I think it should be used with prudence, right? Like maybe it will work for all of our clients and will work for all of our individuals. I know some staff that I do prefer to see in person, right? I think they just benefit more from it, and a lot of them ask for it as well. And so just because we can do it in Zoom, it doesn't mean that we will always hold it that way. You know, they'll be like, hey, I learned better in person. I'm like, okay, well, I'll bring in donuts, you know, you bring the coffee, and then we'll have that meeting face to face. So it's brought upon some challenges, but it's also brought upon some new ways of addressing the way we do our work. So.
Thank you all so much. And I think that goes to show that we have not yet settled into a post-pandemic normal. Like, right, there's still going to be a lot more transition, I think, in the next years and decades. And I think for all of you who are in the room here, I think you will be part of that, right? So once you enter into your careers, you will be part of the vanguard of creating whatever work is going to look like in the new generation. So this is really a moment of opportunity and excitement. I've been really inspired by this panel. I hope this was helpful for all of you as well. Thank you. So for panelists, if you don't mind sharing your contact information, if you are open to having students contact you, I would please post them into the chat right now. So for students who are looking to perhaps email one of our panelists today, you can look into the chat, copy paste their emails, copy paste the website, get in contact with them. Please don't feel shy. And I just want to give a heartfelt thanks for all three of you for being here. Thank you so much for giving us your time, sharing your expertise, being so frank and honest with us. And I know that I had a really good time and learned so many things I hadn't thought about before. So again, thank you very much. A lot of gratitude.
Thank you for having me. And I'm definitely feel free, and I'm open for you guys to send emails. Yes, and if you guys just need more information about or like mentorship, I'm more than happy to help answer new questions. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And please take advantage. This is a rare opportunity that somebody is like telling you that you can email them and ask them questions, right? And don't feel like you have to ask about, like if you're not quite ready to apply for a job, you don't feel like you have to be sending a resume. Perhaps you just have a question about the training process or a question about what it's like. Like I think these are really generous panelists, and I think they'd be happy to answer your questions as well. All right, thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You
All right.
too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope to hear from some of you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.